November, go.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here today to talk with you about the case of 311 centers and how those centers are being used not only to serve citizens by through the use of technology and new policies and procedures, but also to empower citizens by providing them with access to the data about the services that are being requested by citizens and then the services that are being delivered. So as this title slide says, I'm from the State University of New York in upstate New York. I run a research center that focuses on the role of technology in the governmental context. And what I'm going to be talking about is how one of the research initiatives that we are carrying out as part of our applied research program is focusing very specifically on smart cities, and in particular, smart city service integration and smart city collaboration. One of the things, as research scientists, one of the things that we were most interested in to begin with in this project is to understand how the phrase smart city is being used globally. One of our very, very important priorities is to fully understand the terms and how the terms are used and how they are often sometimes used without full agreement among a group of people about what they're actually talking about. So sometimes smart city means a better social environment. Sometimes to others it means better transportation systems. There are many facets of what we're all beginning to talk about when we refer to smart cities, and our interest is as academics trying to understand that, the differences that exist, the similarities that exist, and how those terms are used, so we can use that new understanding to more fully inform the initiatives that are being carried out, upon which money, good money, and scarce money is being spent. So what we did in our work is we began to look around at smart city definitions and to try and understand under what conditions one orientation in a definition versus another might be used. And so you can see in these two definitions, or these three, just as very selected examples because of the time, are really somewhat different. The first is talking about computing technologies, critical infrastructure, and services. The second is looking towards the performance of a city in a forward-looking way, with a focus on economy and people and governance. The third, an instrumented and interconnected and intelligent city. And these are all potentially very useful definitions, but we need fully to understand when and how the various perspectives are being brought to the table. And so this is just a quick look at the project that we're working on. We currently have an interest in creating a framework, a global framework that can be used to guide service integration efforts. And by service integration, we mean things where multiple agencies in a single city or in a metropolitan area will come together and integrate the services that they provide, both internal to the cities and the metropolitan governments, as well as to cities themselves. Our interest is in building a research network for smart city research globally, and then to develop a next generation of scholars who can work both in this area as well as work in this model where they're working in very close partnership with government. So our consortium started with this as a map covering North America and Mexico, as well as Shanghai and Macau. Currently, this network has expanded out. We just had a signing ceremony last week, 2 weeks ago, at a conference that we ran in my organization in New York, and have expanded out now to include Fudan University. We will include Montreal, Bogota, Medellin, Seoul, Utrecht, Poznan, and other multiple cities reached through the ICMA. If anybody would like to talk to me about the consortium, we'd be happy to talk with you, or I'd be happy to talk with you after the fact. So the consortium is interested in these kinds of questions. How does a government understand smartness? What does that mean to that city government itself? Not what is somebody else telling them smart city means, but what does it mean inside the city, and how are they acting based on their understanding of that phrase, smart city? What makes a difference? What is influencing those efforts? And then ultimately, what are the similarities and differences across the cities that we're studying? Our interest is in producing this set of deliverables, which I am not going to talk about here today, but if you are interested, you can go to the website, you can find the papers, the practical guidance documents, information on the consortium, etc. But this slide gives you a quick look at all of the literature that we could find, both academic and practitioner literature, that talks about and references smart cities in some way, using the phrase smart cities, intelligent cities, ubiquitous cities, etc. The list is very, very long of the various phrases that are used to characterize what I think we're all here talking about. And so we took those phrases and put them into this framework, understanding that some of what's happening in our cities has to do with the physical environment, society, government, and technology. And then understanding even in more concrete detail, what are the labels upon which under which these various activities are being categorized. And we do that to try and begin to narrow in on some very specific cases, some very specific examples of the kinds of things that we want to talk about. And so smart city in our world, in our way of looking at the world, includes smart government. It isn't only smart government, but smart government is a critical part of it. And inside of that, smart cities programs that are run by government agencies. Not that, there are many, many actors in the smart city context, and this particular focus is government looking out. And so our interest is in 311 centers, which in many cases are being brought together in the interest of smart government. They are allowing for managerial and organizational capabilities to be increased for effective use of technology tools, tailoring services through a smarter government, investments in government capability as a way to tailor services to the needs of individual citizens. Efficient communication and collaboration inside of cities itself as a way to provide value. So we've had a bit of a conversation here about about 311 systems. Could everybody raise your hand if you know what a 311 system is? Okay, so there are not too many of you actually. So a 311 system is essentially an integrated call center. They typically provide three main functions: service requests. So a 311 center has a set of operators, has a website, has other kinds of services available to citizens, email, SMS potentially, that allow a citizen to contact the service center, file a service request, ask for information, get a referral to a different department. In the US and Canada, over almost 300 cities have these kinds of services. It's a non-emergency toll-free number, and it provides quick, easy-to-remember access to city services and city information. And a 311 service in a city with a front end requires coordination among the city departments so that they can agree upon what will the operator tell the citizen when the citizen calls the 311 center. Philadelphia and New York both have these 311 centers in place, and I want to tell you just briefly about those 311 centers to use them as an example for how data that's being collected as part of these systems is now being used in new and creative ways to serve citizens more generally. So the data is used to track a single service request, but at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the year, when we have 17 million service requests on file, how that data gets used to inform decision-making in the cities is a very different thing. So it's the individual and then the collective, and then how data about the individual gets used to serve that particular citizen in response to their request, and then how the data collectively is used by everyone to make the city more attractive. I'm just going to do a chime check here because there's no 3 minutes. Okay. I knew I was getting close. So very quickly, two very different cities. New York City has a system that's been in place almost 10 years. Philadelphia, quite new. And you can see some differences here, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to spend much time on those. New York City 311 is quite an impressive system. It has a very deep and robust set of services that citizens can access. If I go to the 311 system on any given day, it tells me what's going on with the schools. It gives me most regularly, if you will, FAQs for the city, the most regularly requested pieces of information. And then I can, of course, enter in a new request for service. The city of Philadelphia has a much more rudimentary model that they're using, a much more rudimentary interface. You can report an issue, view a request, and download the mobile application. And so you can see the differences between the two interfaces. New York City, 10 years in place, lots of money invested in this system. Philadelphia, just about a little bit over 4 years, not very much money, but the services being provided in both cities are making a difference in the cities. New York City, you can go in and get the information and track down what's happening in different parts of the city. This particular image that a citizen could pull up tells me about all of the public safety requests that have been filed with the city in any particular period of time. So I, as a citizen, can know how safe my neighborhood is, how well repaired the neighborhood is, and make some decisions accordingly. New York City has also put in place the 311 texting functionality at this point. So if I'm a citizen, I'm out someplace, I see an issue, I can text that issue into the city, and the city will respond accordingly. What's happening in Philadelphia is a little bit different because they don't have the ability to create the kind of infrastructure that's been created in the city, or maybe they have the ability, they just haven't had the time. Eventually they will get there. What they have is evidence that once postings about services issues are being made available to citizens, other citizens are jumping in and answering questions. So a citizen puts a question into the Philly 311 system, that question becomes public, and other cities are now able to crowdsource or co-produce value for that citizen. Philadelphia has to be more creative. It doesn't have the kinds of resources, 400 people on staff that they have in New York, and so they have to take alternative strategies for making sure that citizens get the answers that they need. The other kind of innovation that's occurring in Philadelphia, which is, I think, providing citizens tremendous value from the data, is that the data is being used to identify the most problematic communities in the city. And those communities are getting particular attention from the mayor's office, from police, from community service organizations. And so the data that's now being provided through the Philly 311 system, data that says there's problems with the streets, there's crime on the corners, the children are going to school. It is that data that's now being collected by Philly 311 that's helping the mayor's office target particular interventions into neighborhoods that need them most. And so citizens having access to data through both data that's collected in the process of serving the city and managing the city, but also delivering services out to citizens, is creating new capability for collaboration, for partnerships, for engagement, and also actually providing better service for citizens. So there are lots of challenges here, and I'm just about done. Lots of challenges here. Philadelphia faced tremendous funding challenges. They started their project in 2008. If any of you remember what happened in 2008, right? The economic downturn, they faced huge budget cuts as a consequence of that, and so have done the best they can. New York was online and up and running for years before they faced the kind of financial challenges that they're facing now. Huge challenges with respect to cultural differences between 311, which is a service-oriented organization. They train the staff on how to be service-oriented, and other departments. Other departments in the city of Philadelphia were receiving a 47% dead call response, which in 311 vernacular means 47% of the time nobody answered the phone. So we have 311, which is trying to change the reality that other departments have created, which is that the phone gets picked up within 30 seconds. The phone gets picked up, the answer gets provided. So this is my last slide, and I would like to ask you to keep an eye on the 311 systems, and they're called many different things around the world, not always 311. This is how they're referred to in the US and Canada, but they have tremendous value in terms of making a city smarter, both through the capability to improve services and to capture data that can be then used by government officials to inform policy and practice creation, but also to empower citizens. And so the question is ultimately, how can more cities harness the full potential of 311-like systems, both, again, to improve services, but also to more fully empower citizens? Thank you.